Jolene Buchowski is a short, shapely woman with shoulder-length dark brown hair and gray-blue eyes. She is Rob Bukowski's longtime wife, and together they own my favorite jewelry store. Jolene and I worked on a custom necklace design for my wife for our upcoming 20th wedding anniversary. I had purchased a large piece of malachite at a custom stone store, a turquoise stone not often found in large pieces, and Jolene and I were figuring out how to set this egg-shaped stone to make it really bright. My 20th anniversary was 9 months away, but I'm the type of person who likes to wrap up important things early. I figured 20 years of marriage is a long time, and I wanted my gift to reflect that. I work as a forensic accountant and make a good income, so I had no trouble spending $4,200 on this gift. My wife certainly deserved it. We have had 19-plus years of a wonderful marriage, and since we are both in our 40s, I think the best is yet to come. Both of our daughters are due to go to college within the next 3 years, and we've discussed all sorts of things we could do after becoming an empty nester. We loved raising our children, but we were also looking forward to this new and exciting phase of our lives. Jolene told us it would take 4 months to create the necklace. We agreed on a down payment of half the amount. I paid, she hugged me, and I went back to my office feeling like a cat that had eaten a canary and a sparrow for dessert. As promised, 4 months later, the necklace was ready. The braided chain of 14-karat gold matched the stone and setting perfectly. Jolene didn't even bother to ask if I wanted it packaged in a case. I had bought enough stuff there for us to discuss the lack of packaging. On the way home, I called our favorite high-end Italian restaurant and made reservations for our anniversary night. It meant I would have to wait another 5 months, but that was fine with me. Everything was ready to go. Spring in the Midwest is a beautiful time when everything starts to come alive and green after months of cold and mostly gray days. As I drove home, I thought about getting the mower out of the garage next weekend and tidying up the lawn around the house. I briefly considered asking my daughters to help me, but quickly discarded the idea. There was no way in hell 2 teenage girls were going to miss a beautiful spring weekend helping their father with yard work. To myself, I chuckled at my insanity as I squeezed my car into the garage next to my wife's car. Speaking of girls, I noticed that Mo's car wasn't parked in its usual spot near the entrance. I absent-mindedly wondered if Jude was with her. When I walked in the door from the garage, there was no smell of dinner, which meant that my wife and I were either going out to eat or I would be grilling. I was really hoping it would be the latter. I love grilling, and I especially love grilled food. All food tastes better on the grill. Tracy was sitting in the family room with a glass of white wine in her hand. She was still wearing the outfit she wore to work, which tipped me off that we were probably going to go out to eat at a pretty good restaurant. "Is Jude coming with us? Or is she going with Mo?" I asked my wife bluntly. "The girls will be at my parents' house until Sunday. We need some adult time, King," she replied, taking a quick sip of wine. I'll admit, I was a bit of a pervert. My first thought was that we would have a romantic 2 days in bed playing games. In her 43 years, my wife still had a beauty that made heads turn wherever she went and a body to match. However, the expression on Tracy's gorgeous face was far from playful. I stopped like a dumbfounded man, feeling a hard punch to my stomach. My mind began to dart around, trying to figure out which family member had died. "I want a divorce, Kingston," she said quietly but firmly. Somewhere in the back of my brain, an explosion went off. I thought I was frozen in place. It took an unknown number of seconds before my brain turned back on. What?" I asked meekly. I didn't say my brain was on full blast. "I want a divorce," she repeated in a strong, clear voice. I know that for a moment I acted like a fish out of water, gulping for air. "What? I had no idea we had a problem. What the hell are you talking about?" I started quietly, but I finished loudly. She didn't even flinch, just kept staring straight at me, practically looking right through me. "Who is this woman?" I bought some time by walking over to my well-stocked liquor buffet and hesitated a bit over what to choose. Let's see. Tequila. No, that's for happy events, parties. Bourbon. No, too casual. Rye. That's a good strong whiskey. No, not serious enough for the situation. Scotch. Single malt. Serious. Very serious, I muttered as if to myself. I poured the equivalent of 2 shots and added 2 teaspoons of water to the glass. When I turned back to my wife, her gaze turned fierce. Okay, mission accomplished. Now we're both a little out of sorts. What's going on, baby? We barely spoke. I thought everything was fine, even better than fine, I said. I love you, King, and I always will, but I don't feel attracted to you anymore, she said. I want to be attracted to you again, but I won't cheat on you. I need to get a divorce so I can be free and find someone I can fall in love with. I suddenly felt like I was about to throw up. Instead, I took a good sip of my Glenmorangie and felt the liquid move out of my mouth, down my throat, and into my stomach. Out of the blue? I mean, I get that you don't want to cheat on me, but you want to end us without even giving us a chance to come back? I asked. It's over between us, King. Why ruin the memory of what we had? It can only go downhill from here. And to answer your unasked question, there's no one else yet. I wish we could still be friends. If we end this now, I think we can do that. And get an adult divorce without all this antagonism crap, Tracy said. Does that mean you'll be reasonable about alimony? I asked. And you realize that the girls would rather stay in the house with me? Yes, she said affirmatively. Tracy stayed true to her word, at least as far as child support was concerned. I was surprised, however, when I received a summons from the office on Monday morning. It meant that all of this had been brewing for quite some time. I was also a little disappointed that she had arranged for it to be handed to me at work. Given that we had talked about it, I felt that she could have served it on me at home. It certainly would have played better if she wanted us to remain friends, as she claimed. The next day, I took a couple hours off and took the paperwork to my lawyer, who had been my boss's lawyer when he was getting divorced 5 years ago. She told me that it was a good deal, and if I signed it, she could start acting on it right away. It would be about 6 months later, and I'd be in the divorce statistics, just like that. My daughters were as surprised by their mother's request as I was when we told them about Tracy's divorce request that Sunday morning after they got home from her parents. "What did you do, Dad?" Mo practically screamed at me after Tracy got her scoop out. I expected a negative reaction, but I wasn't prepared to be attacked, especially since I wasn't the one who initiated the act. "Not my merit, not my choice, not my fault," I said. Mo shifted her gaze from me to her mother. Tracy lowered her eyes. It was the first time she didn't look completely in control of the situation. Maureen, 18 years old, a high school senior, was practically Tracy's doppelganger, both in appearance and behavior. She crossed her arms under her breasts and glared at Tracy. Like so many times before in our marriage, Tracy looked at me, expecting me to come to her rescue with an explanation. I raised my eyebrows and held up my hands in a sign of surrender. "Your circus, yours and your monkeys," I said. Tracy looked at both girls. Judith is 16 years old and a senior. Explaining everything to the girls took 10 minutes. The question and answer period took another 10 minutes. The excuses and apologies took another 5 minutes. "I'm sorry, Dad. I guess I was too hasty," Mo said when Tracy was done with everything. Then turned to her mother again. "What the hell, you bitch? You just threw away almost 20 years of your life with the nicest guy in the world? On a whim? This is a bad joke, isn't it?" she yelled at Tracy. Tracy stuttered and stammered. She explained it all to the girls no better than she explained it to me. She reiterated that she hadn't cheated on me and she didn't want to. We continued to live in our house. I stayed in the guest room until the divorce was finalized. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected phone call from a neighbor, John Reagan, who lives 2 houses down from our house. Mo, Jude, and I were gorging on a couple pizzas for dinner since Tracy was working late. It was something she had to do occasionally in her 15 years at First Financial, so the girls and I usually used it as an opportunity to get something yummy for dinner. "Do you have a minute, King, to talk without the girls?" John asked, in a tone I usually heard from the Undertaker. "Let's go to my office, John," I said, getting up from the kitchen table. Both girls looked at me. I nodded and walked out from behind the table. "So, John, what's wrong?" I asked. "Is everything okay with you and Tracy? Do you know what I mean?" John asked uncertainly. I knew exactly what John Regan was asking. I quickly debated with myself whether I wanted to cover for my soon-to-be ex-wife. "No, we're not okay," I answered. 2 weeks ago, she filed for divorce." "Why?" The silence lasted about 5 seconds, after which he cleared his throat. "Because she's in the back room of Beef and Spuds playing kissy-face with some young guy. Helen nearly spit out her food when they walked in hand and nearly died of a heart attack when they kissed." "Damn," I said quietly. "Thanks for the information." Finished talking, I looked at the faces of my daughters as they entered the room. "If she was telling the truth about not cheating on me before, I think that will be over with tonight or very soon in the future," I said sadly. "True. She also told me that she wasn't dating anyone, so—" Both girls burst into tears and hugged me. Tracy walked into the house around 9 o'clock. We were sitting in the family room watching TV. When she stopped on the doorstep, the girls and I looked at each other and then, without saying anything, went back to watching. Tracy pouted and walked away. We noticed she hadn't popped in the shower, and understanding looks flashed between us. The following week on Wednesday, Tracy worked late. The girls and I discussed that she was trying to deflect our suspicions by being late on alternate days. This time, however, when she walked in, we heard the shower running a few minutes later. Even though she was suing me, I wasn't sure I had enough information, so I asked my attorney if she had a private investigator in mind. The investigator my attorney hired reported back a month later, and it was no surprise when he said that every time she went out, Tracy was with the same man, and yes, several times she and her partner had sex. I was surprised when it was revealed that the lover was her immediate boss, Vice President Johann Westler. Westler had transferred to the position the year before from the firm's Buffalo office. He is a 35-year-old Dutchman who moved to the United States 13 years ago. A good-looking, trim, blonde son of a bitch, about 5'8" and 90 pounds, well-built, judging from the pictures the PI had of him. I'll admit, I was devastated. Tracy and I had been together for almost 22 years, counting the 2 years we dated before we got married. I consider myself a decent guy, but Tracy is at least 2 notches above me in looks. For a long time, I wondered how I was lucky enough to get this goddess. We bonded from the beginning, and I thought our marriage was getting better every year, at least until she told me I was sorely mistaken. About a month later, on a Saturday morning, Tracy threw up in the bathroom while the girls and I were eating breakfast. The girls flinched when they heard their mother vomit, and I grinned from ear to ear. "Doesn't it bother you?" Jude finally asked. "It's disgusting." "No, it just brings back old memories," I replied. "Of what?" Jude asked. At that moment, Tracy staggered into the kitchen. "Morning sickness!" I exclaimed happily. "Feeling like crap, my unfaithful wife?" Tracy raised her head at my exclamation. Her eyes widened. No, I didn't cheat on you," she screamed. "Yes, you did, my dear, and for weeks now, after I filed for divorce. Technically, we're still married and will be for weeks to come. That makes you both a liar and a whore, my dear wife, plus pregnant." Both my daughters stared wide-eyed at their mother, who in turn stared wide-eyed at me. "Don't you remember how bad you felt about Jude?" I asked. "Oh no, I forgot," she replied. "Oh God, Mom, you got knocked up by another man while you're still married to Dad? I'm glad I'm going off to college soon, or there's no way I'd be able to meet my friend's eyes," Mo said. You always taught me not to be a slut. And then you turned into Sally Slut yourself. That's just great. I've got 2 more years before I'm gone, so anyone can rub my face in the fact that you're a slut, said Jude. I'm not a whore, shouted Tracy. No, you are a whore, I said quietly. You're divorcing me because you want to entertain Johann Westler, and you couldn't even keep your legs closed until the divorce was official. I'm sure if you look at the definition of a slut, your picture is right up there. She blushed to a crimson color and lowered her eyes. You weren't even delicate about it. I can't tell you how embarrassed I was when the neighbors called to tell me about you and Westler. All you had to do was wait 6 lousy months and it wouldn't have looked so bad. You told me you weren't cheating and you wanted a divorce so you could find someone to fall in love with. Well, you certainly showed me. It's not about love. It's called lust, Tracy. The next weekend, Tracy moved in with Westler. The girls and I helped move boxes of her stuff into the car. I made sure to change all the locks and code on the garage door. I didn't see Tracy again until Mo's graduation party, although I knew the girls visited her occasionally. Even though they were unhappy with her and embarrassed by her, she is still their mother. I never forbade them from spending time with her. Graduations always draw a lot of people, so Jude and I were sitting on the bleachers in the gym waiting for the ceremony to begin when a very pregnant Tracy and Johann showed up. After noticing us on the bleachers, she headed straight toward us. I noticed a few parents who knew us and felt a mixture of embarrassment, humiliation, and horror as Tracy sat next to Jude and Johann sat next to her. Aren't we a nice little family? I said to no one in particular as the couple joined us. Just supporting our daughter, Kingston, Tracy replied formally. She shifted her gaze from me to Johann, and I realized what she was about to do. Stop, Tracy. Don't you dare introduce him to me here in front of everyone. Believe me, I know who he is. He looks exactly like the pictures and videos I've seen, I growled. She looked at me with surprise and offense. You have pictures and videos? Oh my God, King. Really? She whined. You're the one who started the game. I was just playing it to the best of my ability. I needed to know exactly what I was up against, I replied. At that moment, Jude raised her hand sideways in front of her face, effectively creating a barrier between Tracy and me so we couldn't see each other. It's time for you two to act like adults here, she warned. Everyone starts to look at each other. I think they're betting on whether Daddy will slap a pregnant woman. That shut us up. It's bad enough having a fairly mature 16-year-old in the room. Tracy gave birth to her 3rd daughter a few weeks before Christmas. I didn't follow it, but Jude did. Johann had called her a few minutes after her half-sister Maya was born. She was very excited and ran up to me to show me the picture. Great, I said, trying to feign interest. Apparently, I didn't fake it well enough because I pissed her off. That's great, Dad. That's mature. It's not the kid's fault, Dad, Jude hissed. It's my turn to show some fervor. I'm glad you're happy, Jude. She's your half-sister. But to me, she's nothing more than the offspring of my cheating ex-wife. Short and sweet, I hissed back. She blinked once, twice, 3 times, then brushed a tear from her face. I'm sorry, Daddy, she said almost in a whisper. I got carried away. I wasn't thinking. She came over to me and we hugged. Unlike Tracy, I waited until we were legally divorced before going on a first date. In fact, after the divorce, I waited about a year. She was a friend from our former circle who had been divorced for about 5 years. I figured Emma was almost expecting the call when I made it. Nevertheless, she seemed enthusiastic and didn't hesitate to say yes. I was glad because, truth be told, it had been a long time since I'd gone on a date, especially with someone not named Tracy. Emma was a tall, slender, red-headed girl about the same age as me. She was actually more of a friend of Tracy's than mine, but I went the safe route rather than try with someone I wasn't that close to. At least I thought that was the safe path. That thought faded away when she opened the door wearing a royal blue dress with a deep neckline that sat on her as if it had been tailored just for her. Did I mention the hemline was mid-thigh at best? I almost choked on her porch. And this for a Shakespeare play followed by a meal at a British pub restaurant. "Oh," I whispered, unable to say anything else. "I assume you approve of my dress," she said, smiling broadly. All I could do was nod like a dumb bastard. "How about we go inside and have a few drinks until you find your voice, King?" she asked. I smiled and nodded. I hoped my voice would return soon. My voice came back, and we had a great night out. And then a great night inside. It was her voice that was making all the noise as I doubled back into the land of sex. I have a tendency to overanalyze, and I was constantly analyzing when we returned to her house after eating and playing. You always want to think you're satisfying your woman, but for the past 2 decades, I'd only had Tracy's opinion with me, so I had to hope she was telling me the truth. Emma gave me a very encouraging second opinion that spurred me on to greater heights. She asked me to stay the night, and I seriously considered it. But I didn't give Jude any warning and decided it was time for me to go home. She kindly gave me a reprieve when I explained everything. "Thanks for a great night, King. I'd love to do it again sometime," she enthused. Bingo. I walked into my house a little after 1 o'clock in the morning and was surprised to see Jude lying on the couch in the family room watching TV. "You look none the worse for wear, but you're back much later than I thought you'd be. Is my dad in the game?" she asked. I blushed deeply. Jude is 17 years old now, and she lives in the real world. "Now you know what it's like, Daddy. When sometimes you mess with me when I come home from dates," she said with a smirk on her pretty face. "May I suggest that Mrs. Donovan is a good dating partner?" I blushed again. I was sure she didn't need or expect an answer. Jude had regular contact with her mother and child, and even babysat Tracy for a while. I was fine with that. We just didn't need to talk about her sleepovers at the Wessler house. Remarkably, Tracy did not marry Johann. After about a year, I assumed she would only do so after sucking me dry of all 5 years of alimony. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. The phone call from Rayanne Lincoln came out of the blue. Rayanne was one of Tracy's co-workers at First Financial. We had socialized a few times at various events where spouses were present, but I can't say we were particularly friendly or had any kind of connection. My first thought was that this was some kind of setup. Rayanne had gotten divorced about 5 years ago after catching her husband cheating. She was tall for a woman with large breasts and a muscular ass. She had big brown eyes, a mop of long brown curls, and flawless mocha-colored skin. "Kingston, I'm not sure you remember me," she began. When I answered the phone, the caller ID showed who it was, so I started right away, aggressively. The best defense is a good offense, a strategy of sorts. "Of course I remember you. It's hard to forget a volleyball goddess," I replied. "About 15 years ago, Rayanne played volleyball at the University of Pennsylvania. She still looked like she could walk onto the court. I think I surprised her by remembering that fact." "Wow, you remember me?" she hesitated. "Why don't we go on a date?" she asked. "I mean, you're single now." I have to admit I didn't see that one coming. I had just been asked out by a beautiful woman, a former co-worker of my ex-wife's. If this is some kind of setup, I'm willing to give it a shot. "Tracy always said you were a great guy, and I could use some of that in my life right now," she said. "I could use some goddess companionship right now." I agree. We visited the art museum and then went to a barbecue restaurant. It was a casual day, so she wore skinny jeans and a sweatshirt. For most women, this outfit would probably be forgettable, but with that ass wriggling in the jeans, I could never forget it. Several times throughout the day, she caught me ogling that ass. She had the decency to smile every time she did. "I'm sorry. I guess I left my coolness at home today," I muttered after she caught me once. My face was very red. I just had a great time with her. Got a chaste kiss on the cheek while dropping her off outside her apartment. Jude was part of the marching band, so I ran into Tracy and Johan at several competitions over the next 2 years. I was polite to her, but rude to him. Several times she chided me for it until I snapped back at her. "The bastard stole and knocked up my wife. He deserved that and more. If you guys have a problem with that, just stay away from me," I spat out. "He didn't steal me. We were already divorced," she squeaked. "You're just talking yourself into it," I replied before walking away. Johan, for his part, looked like he wanted to test me. He was a little larger and 9 years younger, but Tracy knew me well and realized that my rage would take me far. She repeatedly convinced him to just ignore me. It was probably for the best, because after the divorce I started spending even more time at the gym. I had always taken care of myself, but I used the gym more and more to burn off anger and fill the resulting free time. It happened early in our second year, post-divorce, when Ray Ann invited me to a first financial Christmas party. We had dated several times in the previous few months, and on the fourth date, I was invited to share a bed with her. She knew I was having problems with my ex and Johan, but figured I was capable of being cool enough not to embarrass her, if not even myself. I assured her that I wouldn't do anything that would embarrass her in front of her coworkers. She promised, if I could do it, a special treat. Ray Ann was the epitome of the long, cool woman in a black dress when I picked her up at her apartment the night of the party. I'm sure I was drooling when I walked in. She kissed me gently on the lips, promising more later, not wanting me to mess up her makeup. The first part of the evening was spent drinking and socializing with the live band in the background. I noticed a few heads turned in our direction as we, along with Ray Ann, walked in. Saw a few familiar faces, so I'm sure many remembered me from back when I was married to Tracy. I'm sure tongues were loose, especially because I was at a party with the hottest woman. I didn't notice Tracy and Johan show up, but I almost ran over my ex-wife as I turned away from the bar with drinks for me and Ray Ann. "The last person I expected to see tonight." "What a nice surprise, Kingston," Tracy purred. "New suit? You look very handsome." "Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, new suit. I didn't want to look like an asshole being with Ray Ann. You look very nice, too, but then again, you always have." "You've always been a gentleman, and a good-ass licker," Tracy said. "Maybe, but you know I'm not a liar. I wouldn't tell you if it wasn't true," I replied. She actually looked good, maybe a pound or 5 heavier than when we were married, but the extra weight gave her a shapelier, more exciting look. I apologized and walked around her, again paying attention to all those heads watching our exchange of remarks. I found Ray Ann and held out the drink to her. She took it and kissed me softly on the lips again. I put my arm around her waist, then gently ran my hand over her lush ass and up to her waist again. "Behave yourself," she said in a stern but calm voice. "I will, ma'am," I said, appropriately reprimanded. Dinner was followed by drinks, and then the hall was rearranged for dancing. 30 seconds on the dance floor showed me that Ray Ann could really dance. And me? So at best. Still, I enjoyed watching up close how every part of her body swayed. We stayed there for about 30 minutes before heading to a table to catch our breath and get a drink. While at the bar, I saw several men approach Ray Ann, and to her credit, she turned them all down. The parade of guys slowed down, but continued when I returned, and to their credit, most of them played by the rules and asked me first before asking Ray Ann if she wanted to dance. Several times she came out on the dance floor explaining that she had commitments to several high-ranking people in the firm. I understood and told her to do what she had to do. I didn't like it when Johan approached the table, smirked, and asked if I minded if Ray Ann danced with him. Realizing full well that he was the vice president, I nodded slightly and he held out his hand to Ray Ann. She obviously knew that Westler had stolen my wife, but in this setting she knew she couldn't disrespect him, so she got up and followed him to the dance floor. I watched intently as the couple danced to the fast music until my attention was disturbed by someone's hand resting on my shoulder. I looked up and saw my ex-wife studying my face. "How about giving an old friend a spin on the floor while our partners are busy?" she asked sweetly. "No thanks, Trace. You're my ex-wife for a reason, remember?" I hissed. "Can't we at least be friends?" she asked. I looked at her like she had 2, maybe 3 heads. "I love you too much to even begin to like you." "No, we can't be friends," I said. She looked shocked. Her mouth opened and closed twice, but no words came out before she walked away as if in a daze. I stepped out onto the dance floor, gave Westler a pat on the shoulder, and replaced him as Ray Ann's partner. He was smart enough not to hesitate or make a fuss. At our table, Ray Ann and 2 other women, Christy and Joni, seemed to be having fun teasing me. Christy, the divorced woman, was tall, Mediterranean-looking with a firm body, and Joni, the widow, was Nordic-looking with a boyish haircut and breasts and ass 1 size larger than her height, if that's possible. "So, when do we get a chance to ask Mr. Perfect out?" Christy asked. "By now, you've probably had a taste of Ray Ann and should be looking for other conquests, being a red-blooded single guy." She clapped her eyelashes flirtatiously and then laughed along with both others. "Tracy always said you were the perfect husband," Joni continued. "We couldn't believe she'd let you go just like that, especially for Johan's sake. What went wrong, if you don't mind our asking?" "Nobody's waiting for the Spanish Inquisition, to quote Monty Python," I said. Ray Ann and Christy realized the reference and smirked. Joni, who was about 5 years younger than the other 2, didn't get it, and her face reflected it. Still not completely sure, although I have my suspicions. One day she tells me she doesn't love me, and a couple days later she files for divorce. 2 weeks later she's dating Westler, putting the 2 together. Somehow I get 3. She tells me she's divorcing me so she won't cheat on me, then starts sleeping with him and gets pregnant before we're even divorced. "We all warned her about him," Christy said. "They started going to lunches together. Then the lunches got longer. We don't know if she was cheating, but every time she was around him, we could see their little touches. When she was with him, she giggled like a schoolgirl. It was pathetic. Not so much anymore." "Familiarity breeds contempt," I said, quoting an old idiom. None of the trio reacted. I led first Joni and then Christy onto the dance floor. We danced through a couple songs each, then went back to the table. "Okay, you 2. That's all you're gonna get from my man. My man. You got it?" Ray Ann said sharply. I heard the metal in her voice, and I realized the other women picked up on it too. Still, I had to work myself up a bit. "Wait, does that mean I can't try these 2? I asked in my most innocent tone. "Only if you don't want they anymore," Ray Ann said, covering my genitals with her hand for a second. "I'm partial to possessive balls." So I leaned over to Ray Ann and pressed my lips to hers. "Oh, please, you 2. Don't make me tell you to get a room. That would be so corny," Joni said. "We don't need to get a room. We both have our own houses," Ray Ann giggled. Later that evening, I learned from Ray Ann that she never told Tracy about us. I had to ask about it. "Not that stupid bitch's business," Ray Ann replied. "We're friends, but that doesn't mean I approve of all my friends' decisions. And her stupidity is my happiness, unless you're still hung up on her. She was my first love, and I guess some part of me will always love her. But she's my past." "And you're my future?" I asked. She put her hands on either side of my face. Her eyes practically glowed. She pressed her lips to mine. 2 months later, I proposed. 6 months after that, we were married. Although Ray Ann and Tracy were pretty good friends, we didn't invite her to the wedding. She said she figured it out when she and Ray Ann talked. A couple years later, Johan returned to Holland, leaving Tracy alone to raise their daughter. At least the creep kept sending money. My daughters kept in touch with Tracy and their half-sister, but as I asked, did not tell me about Tracy's life. The girls said that their mother had asked them several times to try to get me to talk to her, but none of them wanted to go through with it. Ray Ann kept her at a distance, too. not even inviting her over to our house. Unable to withstand all the machinations, Tracy finally approached me directly. "We've had 23 good years, King," she said. "The least you can do is give me some time to talk to you. I still love you." "Yeah, I know. It's just that you're not attracted to me anymore. And I love you too much to ever even start liking you, Tracy, so don't expect me to be your friend."